Well, it's a few minutes after I say we get started. So, hi, how y'all doing? Hi, Leanne, Daryl. It's like that's all we have today. That's nice. Leanne, you get to ask all the questions. I hope you're ready. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, already ready. I appreciate your expertise. I like listening to all of it.
Oh,
We're
great.
probably going total remote, so this is good.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. I love to
yeah.
hear that. Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot of people make that change. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just there's not a lot of reasons to not. I mean, you got the culture problem, but I think you can make modifications to your work to make that happen. So,
Mhm.
we've definitely talked about how it would look for us. We've got a lot of young families, and a lot of them are like, I kind of need an office. They need that place to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that this is going to be live record. It's going to be recorded, so that's going to be posted on our webinar. So anything here talked about will be up there. And that, sorry, Leanne, but we're going to be doing this so that people can see it on there. So you might hear a lot of redundancy or talk about who we are that you already well know.
No, not a problem. Thank you for letting me know that.
Cool. Well, I'll get started. Hello, my name is Whit Eric. I'm CEO of Hill Country Tech Guys, and today Sarah is with me, our COO, and we're going to talk about kind of the next phase of moving forward and what that looks like and kind of, you know, what all this is, right? So, well, our goal with all this is to share knowledge, to spread what we know, to learn more. We realize it through these conversations. We're learning as much as we're talking, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from people and a lot of good ideas. And it's just been going great. And we're really enjoying the process. So, if you want to see some of our past webinars, you're welcome to take this site down. It's our website/blog. It's pretty easy to find. We're going to be uploading them there as we go. Upcoming, we're going to keep doing this on the third Thursdays of the month. So June 18th, we'll have another one, same time, and also July 16th, keeping it rolling. You're welcome to ask questions in chat or unmute yourself. We're trying to keep this interactive. We want your ideas are as good as ours. So we really like to hear what you're thinking and use that to move forward. We want to talk about, the panic is over, right? People are starting to figure out, for the most part, talking to our customers, how to do business. They know what that looks like now. They understand that it's, there's a way to do this. We've kind of all got what I would say is something going, right? We've all got enabled online at some level. And we think it's time, to start moving forward, right? We've got to start evaluating where we're at now and what needs to look like that. What does the future look like, right? What do we need to do next? So that's kind of what we're going to focus on today and kind of lead ourselves down that path of the next few webinars and what the next steps are. There were some companies that were more prepared for this. And, we look at our customer set, we have some that, day one, they're just back to work, right? And then you have some that, it's been a struggle. It's been a ramp up period. And we realize that that's not necessary, right? We realize that with the right conversations and the right, forethought that some of that was not necessary. So we're going to start to tear down that and explain all the, or at least some. I don't think there's anyone who can explain all the areas at which you need to be protected, but we're going to look at some of those areas and some of those areas that we need to have plans in so that we have some protection, some contingencies figured out.
Yeah, and I would just like to say that what we find that the companies that were more prepared for this were companies that were prepared for something. It may not have been specifically for a pandemic, but they might have had more things set up for, say, environmental disaster, and just having that plan, they were able to easily adopt that into a different type of disaster plan for the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I got calls from people. Can we go to a voice over IP tomorrow? No, I'm sorry, you can't. It's going to take a few weeks. We can do it pretty dang quick, but it's definitely not tomorrow. So that plan and having some of those thoughts figured out is really, really the first step. So, a lot of words are used to explain, contingency plans, business sustainability, resiliency, continuity. How do you say that?
Continuity.
Continuity, man. It's not Friday yet. It really should be. Disaster recovery or emergency preparedness, right? And they all begin with a plan. You got to start there with the plan, or you have nothing. And I think you'll find that plans overlap and situations overlap, that you can fix that with just a little bit of forethought. We've kind of figured, feel like there's a couple questions you need to ask to start, and simply being, what is my greatest risk potential? What is the biggest risk to my business when it comes to technology, finance, physical, personnel, right? What are those biggest risks? And then from those risks, which ones have, or what are the mean time to recovery? Mean time to recovery is a principle we want to introduce to everybody here. And we're going to explain that more as we go on, but these are the questions we're going to kind of start poking around and start evaluating for your business. This is a cool little a graph that we found talking about the risk landscape, right? And you can see here, I kind of put the infectious disease little star on that, right? And that's actually in a very low likelihood, but very high impact section. And it's not, and a lot of these things in the bottom quadrants, other than the top right quadrant, are things that we all kind of know about, but we never thought about. We've never truly wrapped our head around. But the stuff in the top right corner is all stuff we're very familiar with, right? And a lot of us have had experiences in these areas, be it floods or hurricanes or power outages, and right, stuff like that. And these are things that are very easy for us to wrap our head around. And this is where especially if you take this graph into consideration, a good area to focus your energy on, right? So these are the things that are most likely going to have happen to your business, right? And affect you, and then to make changes to your life. So cyber attacks, natural disasters, climate action failure, all these things are things that we can easily write some preparedness plans for and give us some sustainability through. Mean time to recovery. What the concept is, bad things are going to happen, right? And we need to understand what acceptable level of mean time recovery are we okay with? What can our business sustain? Some businesses can sustain hours without their services, without a tool, without the internet. Some businesses can't sustain minutes, right? So a lot of people, they write an SLA and they say, hey, our SLA is we're going to be up 99.99%, blah, 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 blah. Well, to formulate that SLA, I would argue that you need to know the mean time recovery for all of your key applications to make sure that mean time recovery is underneath your SLA. And, most businesses don't even have an SLA, but all businesses have a checking account, right? So what I would say is okay, I'm a doctor. I do $5 million a year. I have this many hours a year I see patients. I can say that my time is worth so much per hour, be it $5,000, $4,000, whatever. That'd be a great doctor right there. And then I can say, okay, if I have no internet, that affects me by, if it's down for 2 hours, that'll cost me X dollars. How much does it cost to make it so my internet doesn't go down? Y, right? Okay, so is it worth to go investing in Y, or is it not investing in Y? The thing I would challenge, or probably the challenging part about this, is deciding how much it affects not your cash flow, but your customer base. Okay, example, patient's in the office, he's taken off from work, he's there. You say, sorry, I can't see you because our internet's down. You're going to have to go home and come back again. Is that patient possibly going to change? We don't know. Is he going to go on Google and give us a bad review because we weren't available? We don't know. Those are the costs that are hard to associate. And I encourage people to put a value. Depending on your business, maybe a 10% of your total revenue, 5% of your total revenue. If you are something like a boutique office, you might even put a higher value because these people have a level of expectation. It's kind of like when you go to a hotel. If you go to the hotel and 2 times the internet's not working, you're not going to probably book at that hotel a 3rd time. You don't have the option of not having the internet or not having air conditioning, for goodness sakes, right? So having this kind of figured out for, okay, our office is closed. What's our mean time to recovery? Well, if we don't have plans to let everybody work from home, that mean time to recovery is high. In this example, we found out here, I'm pointing at the screen, that's really smart. We found out here that there's a failure, so we know it's happened, and then we diagnose what we're going to have to fix. And now that repair time is your IT company trying to ramp up terminal server, install LogMeIn, you're testing, and now we're days down the road before, boop, we're finally doing work again. That's kind of how you have to break down this mean time to recovery. I find it to be a very interesting conversation to have with business owners. Focus, right? We have to focus our energy. We don't have unlimited cash. This is not the United States government. We have to focus. We need to focus on our greatest risk potential, be it our building is 50 years old and water pipes are always breaking, or it might burn. It's just ghetto and it might burn down, or our internet, we're rural and we don't have good internet, or our greatest risk is any downtime. That could just straight up be your greatest risk. Any downtime would greatly affect my business. Having those kind of figured out is definitely one of the things you need to focus on. And then applying the mean time to recovery, figuring out that cost. What is the cost of not having this resource for X amount of time? Y amount of time? And often with time, the cost increases because the expectations of your customers are more greatly impacted. So it's very important to keep that in mind. When we help customers design networks, especially we're very multi-site focused. We like to ask them, why are all the phones being answered by one person or one location? You have all these locations. Let's answer phones at every location. Let's spread it out so that if a fiber gets cut, the rest of your site still function, or even write the call flow so that the calls automatically reroute, because we want our mean time to recovery for a call flow breakage to be instant. And you can do that just with a little bit of forethought and a little bit of conversations with your provider. We can be instant on some of these things and zero cost. You got to think about those things and work through them. Am I going too fast, Sarah?
You're covering a lot pretty quickly, but that's it.
Well, I will admit, I am trying to keep these things fast. I want to give as much info as possible. I want you guys to get value, so I'm trying to throw a lot out there. You're not wrong. So
I would just follow up that if anyone has any questions more specifically about any of these types of things, just send us some emails. You can send us an at first step at hctechguys.com, and we'll get back to you and set up a meeting to talk.
For sure. We'd love that. That'd be great. So thinking about, okay, I've now told you, you've got all these risks. You got all these variables that can affect you. How do you begin to prepare? Well, there's a couple big ones and a couple concepts and a couple ways to think about your business that's important. One of the big things I recommend is asking your vendors for their disaster recovery policy, asking them for their mean time to recover from certain environmental factors, asking them, okay, if my data is encrypted, how long will it take you to do a restore? How often are you taking a backup of my data? Are you doing it daily? If they are, I'd suggest you look around. Or are they doing it hourly? Every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes, depending on the data set. We've got some situations we back up every 15 minutes, and it can save your bacon. Totally can. Having that specific conversation with them to what it is, how it is, and then also I'm going to say with a lot of these things, getting the answer once is not enough. Going back to that vendor annually, biannually, etc., checking it up, check on them. Do not assume compliance or acceptable solutions are out there. You need to double check with them if they've got a plan. Some vendors may have a hard time answering this question, but you just need to know where those gaps are so you can prepare for it. Getting in a rhythm with your IT vendor or your internal IT manager to assess how you're covered for your greatest risk factors that you determined. How are you covered from cyber terrorism? How are you covered from data failure, loss failure, theft, even data loss? Say an employee deletes everything maliciously. How are you covered? Have those conversations with the manager. It's definitely an active process. This is not something that just naturally happens in any IT environment. It is a continuing of pushing the ball forward and being better and better. Taking opportunities to replicate. So when you are a multi-site organization, or when you let people work from home, or you're able to move to the cloud, that gives you the ability to spread out your risk. You become decentralized. Your data is in more than one location. It gives you so much more protection to be replicated to another location, and in so many vectors. In COVID, say your whole office staff in Houston gets sick and you happen to have an office staff in Austin, you have some natural separation of that staff. You can, having multiple locations is a great fix for that. Just like moving your data to the cloud is a great fix. Your office burns down. If you've been working remote like that, then you're able just to log in from home. You get back to work, right? It's just a natural, seamless transition. It works out very well. Everybody talks about backups, right? And I can't say how many places I walk into and their backup solution is not disconnected from their network. And by that, what I mean is a separate isolated system from the network with a separated and isolated backup, with a separated and isolated repository. So you should have 3 copies of your data at all times. You should have it in 2 locations, and that is at a minimum. And I recommend more of that in a lot of cases. But so example would be a copy on the server where you're running it, a copy locally on the disaster recovery device, and a copy in the cloud. And those need to be isolated from each other. By isolation, I mean either different passwords and or different locations, so that once one vector is broken, you can't have access to all vectors. We like true disaster recovery solutions because the mean time recovery can typically be less than 10% of restoring from a remote backup solution. So for example, like Carbonite or these guys that offer backup directly to the cloud, they're cool, they're great. But if you need a whole restore, they're going to overnight you a disk. You might get it the next day. Whereas when you have a disaster recovery solution, you have a copy of your data locally, you have a copy of it in the cloud. And typically the cloud, you're able to access your data in the cloud right away so you can get back to work. So it becomes basically instant recovery in most cases. And then a concept that really applies to all this is if you don't test it, you don't have it. If you're not testing your backup solution, you don't have it. If you're not letting people work from home randomly or on some kind of schedule, then when they need it, it's not going to work. You need to use these solutions. You need to check them out. You need to make sure they work. A lot of people just assume that they got that email saying their backup was good. Is it? Are you able to restore to it? Do we understand the process of restoring to it? It's all the very, very important things. Oh, next slide. All right. Right arrow didn't want to work. So we've made all these changes and we've turned our worlds upside down. We order our groceries online and we hurt, the guy delivering our food leaves on the doorstep and runs away from us. Well, so what does that mean? What is the next version of this? And what are we going to do? How do we keep this rolling, right? So we don't want people to think they're done. Everybody's working from home. We're going to stay working from home. Great. Okay. Now, what I'm going to say is that, there's new things coming, right? So we see lots of benefits, right? Keeping it this way or keeping some hybrid of it, right? You can, it continually protects you for additional flus or colds, diseases, outbreaks, whatever. We have that isolation. We have people separated. We're increasing our distance. If you're only in the office 3 days a week and you're home for 2 days a week, you're still increasing the distance. You're decreasing your exposure to other people. It is lonely, but it does help. It does add to your safety for your business. It also continually assists testing of your work from home disaster recovery plan. Like we were talking about before, if you're not using it, you don't know if it works, you might as well not have it. It continually makes sure that person's home computer is good enough, their home internet's good enough, their voice over IP works, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's way better than, all of a sudden you're trying to send your whole staff home and it doesn't work. Half of them are having problems, right? We have seen an increase in productivity. We've seen people that go home and the lack of office chatters let them get to work. We also kind of feel like people working from home have something to prove. They want to prove they're working. So they're working harder at home. They're getting more things done because they just, I guess their conscience is taking over. We're seeing some interesting results. It can save your company money. There might be some cost and overhead set up with getting these tools available and laptops and all this stuff. But, in our example, we were about to sign a new lease for a new building to get more space. But if we're able to have a third of our staff working from home, I can have a third smaller building. And rent's not cheap, guys. So that could be a huge opportunity for us to be more flexible and to be more money conscious. Flexibility for employees. Pre-COVID, there was negative IT unemployment. It was really hard to find people in IT, and I expect us to get back to there. But being able to be flexible where we hire employees can have huge benefits to help us be more cost effective, get better talent. I really doesn't care where people are. I just need good talent, people that work hard. That's the same for most of us. A lot of us have opportunities to do that. And I think this will definitely increase that. And, that falls a greater pool. Yeah, that's the same thing. We have more you can pull people from outside your geographical area to work for you. I have the idea of hiring people in different time zones to increase my coverage. So I don't have to ask people to work late. I just have people in multiple time zones, and naturally they would work their normal time, and that would give us more coverage in our own office. Little hidden benefits, you don't have to be full-time work from home. That's exactly a good point, right? A hybrid approach is probably what we're going to do, right? So sometimes we come in the office, we run a schedule, like maybe 3 days in, 2 days out, whatever works in your environment. But you can tweak this to make it to where you're comfortable, and you kind of keep this vibe alive. And it's also gives you that redundancy, like we were talking about, where you got people at multiple locations. One internet connection goes out, it's fine. You got 5 other people working from home. They still can get it going. Gives you some survivability. So our previous episodes, we talked about the tools we choose. And a lot of people may have done some quick tool choices like Teams or LogMeIn or TeamViewer, or somebody's paid for use services to get people in and get people working soon. We want people to make sure they're reconsidering and saying, hey, look, that was a great one-time fix, but maybe we make a switch. We find that remote desktop, like I said, it takes time to get set up, a little more upfront cost. But once you own that, it's done, it's set, it's forget, and it's also more secure. It has less egress into your network. It gives you, it's more isolated, more control. It's great to think about maybe now that we need to work on moving towards remote desktop or whatever that new solution look like. And always when picking new applications, do they have a true cloud-based delivery model? Because that would make you stronger, make you more able to work from anywhere. As we see time go on, I think we're going to see an uptick in things like viruses and cyber terrorism towards these home users. They're away from the network. They might click on something different. They don't have the same social network to help alert them of problems. So I highly recommend enhanced antivirus.
Fortunately, that was the reports that came out today, was that what cyber attacks are actually, that they're coming out 3 times as more, especially phishing attacks.
Yeah,
so
it's
already
people
happening.
From home. I guess when they're home, they think they can click on anything. I don't know. So there's enhanced antivirus solutions. And a lot of people have different definitions for this, but solutions that have human-backed monitoring and reporting. So it's not just your passive tool who's just looking for heuristics to block things. People actually analyzing the data, trying to do things about it. Voice over IP phones, right? Having that ability to move that phone around and work from anywhere, or tie it to your cell phone, all those great. Possibly giving your employees an allowance for good home internet, ask them to go up from the lowest tier of spectrum to one level tier more, just so that it's going to work good and they're going to be productive when they're at home. Looking at your collaboration tools. What collaboration tools can you implement in your daily workflow, enhancing those collaboration tools? I think we've been using Teams at our office for about half a year now, maybe a whole year, and we can constantly find new little tweaks and things in it to make it work even better, going down that path. Next time you buy computers, maybe you don't buy desktops. Maybe you buy laptops so that they can carry it home if something happens to the office. Or maybe you require a certain amount of them, take them home every day so that you have some off-site protection in case something happens to the physical office. Headsets. I don't know why, but apparently everybody who works from home, they got to have a headset, right? So let's get some headsets. Let's get prepared for that change.
I know why. Dogs, cats, pets, kids.
For sure. And you know what? I should add on there's webcams, because apparently the day everybody starts working from home, they're out of webcams for weeks, right? Or charging you a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, if the laptops don't have webcams in them, definitely consider that.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of what I want to leave you with. We want to make sure that we're all challenging ourselves. We want to grow. We need to continue to push our customers' networks or our internal IT networks further. Thinking that the server's online and we're in our applications and working, that doesn't mean we're done. We've got to continually keep tearing this apart and looking for ways to make everything better. And that's where the stability and the security is going to come from. So
we do have few questions. Are you ready to answer some?
Hit me.
You talked about a DR plan from your vendors, to getting a disaster recovery plan. There's policy that they internally have.
Mm-hmm.
What would we even be looking for when we just that they have one, or is there something specific that they should have?
Well, hopefully they're able to outline, at least at a higher level, the steps they're going to take to protect you, your data, and your business flow. So you're going to get in my experience, you get a varying list of responses. But it depends on what you're talking about and what response you're willing to accept. For example, if it's your primary line of business application and you call them up and say, hey, I would just like to know what your disaster recovery plan is. What do you have to protect yourself in maybe 4 areas, right? Cyber terrorism, your data centers hit, and get the answers to those questions, right? What you're wanting to see is that they have a plan, there's a published plan, and they thought about it. In some cases, I've gotten back 500-page books after signing an NDA of their entire plan, super thought out, super detailed, and you can go through it. And then that kind of gives you this level of expectation. If you go to a vendor and you ask for the plan, they're like, well, we're going to send people home. Or it's making sure that the plan they give you gives you the comfortability based on what that vendor does for you, right? And even if they say that, well, if something happens, we have to fail over to another data center, and that will take us 4 hours. Well, you guys need to know that, so that if this happens to the vendor, you're going to have a 4-hour downtime while they do the failover process. And also, the next question is, how often do you test this? Because like I said, if they don't test it, it doesn't exist. And if they can't give you that answer and ideally give you proof of the testing, then it doesn't happen. You need to take that in consideration when you continue the relationship with the vendor. I hope that answers your question, but it's not a black and white answer. It's, reading the information they give you has to give you the comfortability that they have a plan and you're okay with their mean time to recovery in each situation.
Yeah, that takes a good leeway to the second question, which is that how often should you be testing your disaster recovery plan?
As often as possible. That's the worst answer ever, right? I would say at least annually, because a disaster recovery plan is about as useful as tissue paper if there's also not a policy that's associated with it, with now guides that you can hand out to the employees. And I'll give you an example. Our primary BDR solution we use is Datto. And if the local site is vaporized, right, that means we've lost our actual data, we've lost our Datto appliances on site, then all we have is the Datto cloud. That's okay. It's super easy to restore from, but what has to happen is we have to boot it up in the Datto cloud, and all of the users are going to get a different way to get to their data. So we have to now train all the users. So it's really good to have all that training already written down, handed out. Heck, even better, go through it with your users. This is what it's going to look like when you get to your data. Now, the restore process for everything is different, but that's one example. We have some solutions to where we're able just to put everything back in moments, and there's not really any explanation to the customers other than, hey, I need 5 minutes to move your data back, and I'm going to restore you to 30 minutes ago or whatever, if something that bad were to happen. But I guess it all depends on your risk. So one of the tools we use boots up a backup every day. So every day, it does a backup every hour. And then the last one of the day, it will boot it up, make sure it gets to a login screen. And then we can even tell it to check and make sure services start, SQL databases mount. And if they don't, it'll send an alert. So, that's the dream situation, right? Because at least then every day we're getting some automated test. And then annually or biannually, we can actually spool it up and make sure we can log in and try to find out the problems, because odds are the backup solution is going to work, but what little glitches are we going to have to smooth out? What licensing do we need to figure out because addresses change and stuff like that? So, yeah.
And the last question is about the hybrid workforce. Is there anything that you need to worry about specifically moving towards that with all of the changes that have been being made, if we're going to keep that?
It's really the same thing as if it's hybrid versus work from home. In my mind, there's a couple new variables. One, I've got more endpoints to secure. So you're really going to have to maybe add a little extra security. What extra security can you put on? Because now you've got more exposure, right? That's the biggest risk to me, is more exposure, more chances for data loss opportunities, for, files that get deleted, files that get stolen, files that get encrypted, you know, your data is in more places, right? So that's the biggest risk. How do you protect that and mitigate that new variable?
Okay, those are all the questions.
Cool. So moving on then, our next webinar is going to be Thursday, June 18th. And what we're going to try to do is show you an evolution of cybersecurity. I want to compare some of the traditional antivirus solutions to some of the more modern human-backed tools, and kind of show you the difference. And I think because a lot of these new tools are not as cheap. I mean, we're talking 5-6x your traditional antivirus, but they're nowhere near the same thing. And we're seeing some really innovative things out there. It's definitely not a one-stop shop anymore. Our typically fully covered customers running about 4 to 5 different types of antivirus and protection tools to give us that 94% coverage potential. I'm never going to say we're going to hit 100% unless we unplug it and turn it off and bury it, but we can get dang close. So we're going to go through that.
And we're also going to be, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, please.
We're also going to be introducing the one thing that we've seen the best benefit from all of our customers once we put it out there. So the one thing that you can be doing in security today to make a huge impact will be
yeah, we're not going to tell you
announcing that. Nope.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you now, we need to get people on these. We also, with any luck, I'm going to do my first live hacking. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be able to actually show you a computer getting infected, how the tool sees the data, and then with any luck, we'll be able to roll the data back, roll the virus back live on screen. So I'm going to have to do some practice in the next month, but we'll get it. We'll get it for sure. So.
And we'll still try to keep it in 30 minutes. All right.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad we had some people join us and had some great questions. Looking forward to our next one. If y'all have any comments, please let us know. If you have ideas, if you don't like my haircut, let me know. Sounds great. Have a good day.